Good morning, everybody. I am here with my crazy hair, just self quarantining and enjoying the ride. Doing what I can do to stay healthy through this time, physically and mentally. So I'm doing my define my day, and I am doing one of my favorite disciplines, reading. So this is the book I'm going through right now, and this is what we're going to talk about today. Um, in chapter 7 on pain is the one I just read this morning. I have one chapter left in this book. And it's a book that, I mean, I understand there's different points of view, right? But this is one where I've been reading things where I've had the beginning of a thought. Like I've had some sort of minor observation through life. And what he says in this book has just taken that thought and made it like, wow, okay, now like it just takes it another step further or a couple steps further and refines it into something that actually makes a lot of sense. And I'll explain it a little bit here in the future as we go through this discussion today. But the big thing is pain. The title of chapter 7 is "Pain is the Universal Constant." And through the previous chapters, he's talked about and like all the different things that people go through and why people bicker and fight and all this other stuff. But this chapter right here is where the meat is for me in regard to this discussion. So I want to go into this, and yeah, we'll talk about this and see how it makes you feel. Might make you feel a little bit of pain. I don't know. It depends. Depends on where your perspective lies. Good morning, Anna. Good morning, Janice. And you just ordered. So Janice just ordered a pile of reads I've mentioned. So thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for following me on this whole thing, this whole trip. Um, it's funny. I get into discussions with people, and this book has actually helped my perspective a little bit because it goes into ideological religions like democracy, capitalism, communism, socialism, all that sort of thing. And it sort of explains the extremist left and right wing views that we see. And now, I mean, that's playing out on Facebook as people are fighting over whether they should be told to stay home or they should get on with their lives. Um, and I understand there's arguments for everything. I mean, we even talked about the my initial response was let people buy paint, but then as one of you mentioned in this group, uh, you know buying paint can actually spread it because people are huddled around a paint counter, right? And so that might explain why they are calling that out as something that you shouldn't be doing. My initial reaction is let people go to their vacation homes. But then somebody else also pointed out in this group that, uh, you know, hospital systems in those vacation areas aren't well equipped. New York City hospital system is, while overwhelmed, has capacity. Where if you go to a vacation home, maybe in the Poconos or something, you're not going to have that ability to handle even 5 people with this problem. So it's perspective, right? And I think people just need to keep perspective. But what I find, I got into a discussion yesterday with somebody. If somebody's completely dismissive of anybody else's point of view, you see different things play out in the conversation. One of the things that I really am opposed to is the way people use talking points to kind of deflect, or they kind of make up concern for groups. So in this particular situation, a talking point right now is people are at home suffering. There's domestic violence, there's anxiety, there's depression, and we need to reopen the economy for those people. Which, I mean, I agree that there is an uptick in those situations. But what I'm opposed to is people using that as an argument when they've never advocated for somebody or advocated for a group of people otherwise. They're just using it to further their argument. And so those conversations I object to. And a place where I really objected to it was the Kaepernick situation. And wherever you fall, whether you think he was just protesting peacefully or you feel he was disrespecting the flag, wherever you fall there, it doesn't matter. But as a veteran, I had a visceral response to people roping veterans into that. Saying that, he's disrespecting veterans. I got to tell you, you can look around a stadium at any point in time and there are a bunch of people talking during the national anthem, not taking off their hat during the national anthem, literally ducking out of the stands so they don't have to stand, and they can go in and buy their beer during the national anthem. So I really, my thought was this, is that as a veteran, I don't want to be a pawn in anybody else's political idea or opinion. Don't use us as a way to make your argument. So if you're against him kneeling, fine. If you are for him kneeling, fine. Leave me out of it, or my group of people. And that's kind of how I feel about, there's people right now saying, well, what about the people, being abused and all that? I get it. There needs to be concern for everybody. But if you're somebody that's never advocated for these people, and in fact, you may have had kind of a callous opinion about these situations in the past, don't all of the sudden start caring about them to further your political opinion or motives. So, in this book, they actually, he talks about how you go through, how people have had these extremist arguments and the way that people frame them and it's very interesting. It's very interesting. So I kind of look at these arguments as more an observer than somebody that's actually deeply engaged in them. And I've used, as I'm trying to navigate this, like my wife, watched this discussion that I had with this person on Facebook yesterday. And she's like, you're not going to change her opinion. So what's the point in even talking about it? And I go into this, I think it's this. It's not so much that I need to change anybody's opinion, but the conversation opens up something, right? It goes back to that dare to lead conversation that Brene Brown talks about. Like, you have to have the hard conversations. You have to rumble with vulnerability and have the conversations about difficult things, or we keep avoiding them and they fester and people go into their corners and they only talk amongst each other, further festering their ideologies. And then when it comes out, they're like just fighting tooth and nail with each other, not hearing anybody else's perspective. So for me, in general, I don't comment with random people on news articles or posts that I see online, right? But when it comes to a friend or an acquaintance or somebody that, I feel like maybe we can open something up, I'll have a conversation. And I don't need to win the conversation. My goal in the conversation is to learn, right? Learn the proper way to address things. Learn to take their sometimes negative or toxic responses with a grain of salt. It's practice, it's experience, because I feel like even if I can't win this conversation, right, if I'm not going to change this person's mind, maybe I can add like a shred of like, maybe I should think about the next thing I say before I spout off, right? Like if I can just encourage somebody to think for a millisecond before they say something next time, I feel like maybe I did a good job there, right? But the other part of it is that I'm practicing my ability to deal with, if you want to call it a difficult person, a person steeped in their own ideology, my ability to navigate difficult conversations. That's an exercise that I'm doing. So I'm not running away from difficult conversations. I'm not trying to win difficult conversations. And we've had them here with Define My Day. Like sometimes people will flip out over something, get triggered or whatever. And we'll continue to have the conversation. We've even allowed those conversations to happen in the user group, right? Where people start attacking each other. And sometimes when you let them play out, like beautiful things happen. We had one a couple of weeks ago where like the two people who I thought were like just I thought it was going really wrong ended up apologizing to each other, and it was an example of emotional intelligence and maturity that I don't see very often, right? But so I don't want to run away from difficult conversations. I want to continue to have them. One, so that maybe we can come together a little bit, but two, so that I can learn how to have them, right? And if I keep just saying, "Look, I can't change your mind. I'm not talking to you anymore." If I say that, then I can't change my mind either, right? Because I'm not going to be listening to anybody, and only listening to the people I agree with. And it just puts everybody in their own separate corner, and it turns into that big blow up fight, right? So there's something we can learn from everything. I mean, there's even the most outrageous things going on. We can learn and grow from it. So I'm gonna get into that, the little bit of the pain that I think is a difficult conversation, and the reason I feel like this conversation needs to be had is because a lot of people are avoiding pain right now. Right? We talk a lot about toxic productivity. We talk a lot about burnout. We talk about the increased stress that people are going through right now, and what our reaction should be. And I'm still exploring what that reaction should be. Right? Am I going to be hyper disciplined? Am I going to be hyper working? Hyper productive? No, I'm not. But trying to completely numb it, completely avoid it, completely sitting on the couch watching Netflix all day, that's not good either, right? And so I can't completely avoid the pain. There's things that we need to learn and grow from here. So, and I think that in even talking that out loud, it's extremes that I'm opposed to, right? It's extremes. It's the people saying that this is all a grand government conspiracy. That like that extreme is probably not one that I'm willing to go to. But then there's an extreme on the other side also, right? And in every political argument right now, there's a significant portion of people in the middle that are pulling back and watching the two extremes fight it out, and you feel like you can't engage anywhere in the middle because you're going to be attacked from both sides, and it feels like an unwinnable situation. So I don't know how to handle that. Are you going to change the minds of the extremists? No. But is there a place to create space for the common sense person who sees that there are two sides to every story, that sees maybe there's some middle ground and some places to work? I don't know, and I don't know what that looks like. But I think that if we continue to educate ourselves, if we continue to make sure that we have thoughtful, measured conversations, if we consider other people's perspectives and lives, if we grow all of that daily, then I think that we can over time change the course of the way the world is going right now. And it starts at home. It starts right now with the person you talk to every day. It starts with the random people on Facebook. It starts with how these little conversations happen. We don't need to be on a megaphone talking to 10,000 people. We can start practicing having a good conversation now with the people that are closest to us. And so that's what I'm doing. And I'm practicing it. And sometimes, like Sometimes the person you're talking to is going to gaslight you. Sometimes they're going to uh, try to insult you personally, and other times, the things you say they're going to take as an insult because you're maybe calling them out on their stuff. And so, sometimes you have to just walk away and say, I'm going to do my thing, you're going to do your thing. Glad we talked, right? And that's just the end of it. There's really no resolution. But the purpose of the conversation was to grow and learn. And that's the conversation that my wife and I had today. Um, like, what's the purpose of having these conversations? Not necessarily to reach a resolution, but to grow from it. And that's it. And even sometimes the conversations are painful. But when you give a purpose to pain, it's not quite the same, right? I'm practically a poet. Good morning, Anna. Good morning, Janice. I think I might have already said that. Good morning, Levi. Good morning, Pam. Good morning, Lori. Good morning, Brenda in Kentucky. Sunny again in Kentucky. That's great. Debbie, good morning from super sunny California. Expecting 80 degrees today. Oh, I'm so jealous. The conversation creates a thought-provoking experience, usually helps me to open up. Awesome. Very cool to hear. All right, so today, here, let me get to our Mimi of the day. We have one today. Welcome to 2020. If you don't already suffer from an anxiety disorder, one will be assigned to you. Yeah. How did that get there? All right. I think this is, you're seeing a lot of things come out in people around us. There are people that I never expected some things from that I'm seeing now, and it's wondering if there wasn't a little hidden depression or anxiety hiding there, and this is causing it to come out, and even a little bit of hatred that comes out. That was probably the most disturbing thing to me when the whole Kaepernick thing happened. I saw some racism in people that they could try to veil it as just caring about the flag or the country or patriotism or whatever. But there's an undercurrent there. Again, you can have an argument either way, but there were some conversations I was having with people that I was really not comfortable with, and I didn't know how to handle it at the time. And I don't know how to handle it now either, I guess. I'd have to be put back in the situation to figure that out if I'm better equipped. But I was shocked and disappointed with a lot of the relationships that I had based on that experience. So, just trying to navigate it the same way everybody else is at this point. Good morning, Carrie. All right, so we talked about the blue dot effect before, right? Where, people create pain in places that it's not necessarily there. Like you start to see blue dots where there's not necessarily blue dots. So this is the blue dot effect. The better things get, the more we perceive threats where there are none, and the more upset we become. It's the heart of the paradox of progress. So as we progress as a society, as we grow older, right, we're not dying in our 30s anymore like we were a couple hundred years ago. Average age is now in the 80s. We're generally healthy. We're generally content. And because of that, our minds default to seeing things wrong. There has to be a certain amount of pain or wrong in the world based on our physiology. And so when there isn't anything there, we have to create it, or we have to magnify the smallest things into a higher level and experience more pain. So he says developmental psychology has long argued something similar, that protecting people from problems or adversity doesn't make them happier or more secure. It makes them more easily insecure. So as you take away problems, like when you go through hard times, you are steeling yourself, right? You are becoming stronger. When you're working your muscle, you're becoming stronger. When you're studying, when you're learning, your brain is becoming stronger. And when you go through adversity, you are becoming stronger. By removing healthy adversity and challenge, people struggle even more. So when you remove, when you try to make everybody feel good, when you give out trophies, when you when you want no one to suffer, when you take away the gift of suffering, you take away the gift of being able to overcome, building that grit skill, right? That skill to persevere through hard times. And then when the slightest ding happens, somebody, when they haven't built that skill, they fold. They don't know how to handle it. So when from like we talk about helicopter parents, right? Back in the day, the more you take away your child's pain, the more pain they're going to experience going forward, because life is harsh. Life isn't fair. Bad things happen. And if you take away the ability to cope with that, to deal with it, to find a way around it, to be inventive, then that person crushes under the smallest pressure. And a lot of it goes into our perceptions of what's going on around us. So he says, much of what we assume to be true and real is relative to our own perception. And he goes into talking about Einstein's theory of relativity and everything, right? And it's basically that, we perceive things differently based on our past experience or even our current experience. The idea that, you could be in perfect health, right? But if you have a pinch in your shoe, that is going to be magnified to the point that it might cripple you, right? Like you can't walk anymore because your shoe is too tight, or you have like a rock in your shoe, right? That just becomes like like incapacitating. It's all relative. Now, meanwhile, if you're in a hole like if you're in the middle of a battle and you have a rock in your shoe, you're there's much bigger things you're worried about than that rock, right? Sure, at some point you're going to want to take your boot off and take it out, but there's other more pressing matters. But if you're wearing dress shoes and a suit and you're walking around going right, then like that's the most important thing in the world. And he goes into like discipline and how you can steel yourself, and he even brings up the Buddhist monk in Vietnam who lit himself on fire, and like the mental resolve that you have to practice to get to that point when you can light yourself on fire for a cause and not move a muscle or scream because you are that mentally disciplined. And it's as sad as that was, like the photo of that went viral before that even existed, right? Before viral existed. And it was, and he says inspiring because of like the dedication and devotion and the alignment with his values and purpose that monk showed. So he goes on to say here, pain is the universal constant of life. He was talking about, how we assume that we are the universal constant of our own experience, that we are unchanging, that our experience comes and goes like the weather. Wait, I read that wrong. Each of us implicitly assumes that we are the universal constant of our own experience, that we are unchanging, and our experiences come and go like the weather. Some days are good and sunny, other days are cloudy and, he says, shitty. The skies change, but we remain the same. But that's not true. In fact, it's backward. Pain is the universal constant of life, and human perception and expectations warp themselves to fit a predetermined amount of pain. In other words, no matter how sunny our skies get, our mind will always imagine just enough clouds to be slightly disappointed. And he says later on down here, as soon as your life improves, your expectations shift and you're back to being mildly dissatisfied again. So then they went into an experiment where somebody had to a pager their pager would go off in this experiment, and they'd have to like write in a log a value of 1 through 10 how happy they were. And sometimes people would write 2 or 3 if something bad happened, but on average, most people wrote 7. They weren't 100% happy, which is 10, and they weren't like blah at 5. They were just 7, just slightly disappointed. And that explains a lot of people who are just never happy wherever they are, right? You know, you can get that nice new car, you can get that promotion, but your life sort of just adapts, your mind adapts to that, to the point where when you're there, you're not going to be completely happy with it. So then he goes on, you can't get rid of pain. Pain is a universal constant of the human condition. Therefore, the attempt to move away from pain to protect oneself from all harm can only backfire. Trying to eliminate pain only increases your sensitivity to suffering, rather than alleviating your suffering. It causes you to see dangerous ghosts in every nook, see tyranny and oppression in every authority, and see hate and deceit behind every embrace. Down below, he says, this is because pain is the experience of life itself. Positive emotions are the temporary removal of pain. Negative emotions are the temporary augmentation of it. To numb one's pain is to numb all feeling, all emotion. It is to quietly remove oneself from living. No matter what peace and prosperity we find, our mind will quickly adjust its expectations to maintain a steady sense of adversity. So basically, what I take from all of this, and he has that photo of the monk over here as he goes into the discussion, right? What I take from all of this is that anytime we run from pain, run from adversity, and stop ourselves from facing the hard facts, truths, or hard things we need to do, we are doing ourselves a disservice. Now, that doesn't mean we overwork ourselves and cause ourselves undue pain, but it does mean we need to stop running away from it. Real quick, I'm going to hit the comments. Carrie says, this is a much needed topic. Just finished Mark Manson's first book and have downloaded the second one to read. Thank you for talking about this. Yeah, I honestly, I have dog-eared so many pages in here. And I told my wife, as soon as I'm finished reading this today, she has to get into it. You know, it's one of the best books I've read in a while. It could be life-changing for a lot of people. Good day, Roseanne. Good to see you. Thank you. Blue dot is a new concept to me. Yeah, me too. Me too. Okay, we'll skip that one. And then seems like Blue dot is a new name for a process many of us, or at least I did, grew up with. We were brought up learning to step up and carry on, taught that life doesn't necessarily get easier, and that we can meet any challenges that might come our way. So the Debbie, the book is Everything is Effed, a book about hope. Although he obviously, and the Mark Manson is the author. Yeah, and Kimber, you can see that too. So he goes into fragility, and so he talks about like being fragile or anti-fragile. Fragile being that, you know, like, and there can be systems that are fragile. Societies can be fragile. Banking systems can be fragile, or they can be anti-fragile. They can be something that withstands hardship. So he goes. He says startups are anti-fragile businesses. They look for ways to fail quickly and gain from those failures. Drug dealers are also anti-fragile. The crazier shit gets, the more effed up people want to get. A healthy love relationship is anti-fragile. Misfortune and pain make the relationship stronger rather than weaker. Veterans often talk about the chaos of combat, how it builds and reinforces life-changing bonds between soldiers rather than disintegrating those bonds. And that's true. Like you watch these movies and you go, how can these guys do this? But it's because they're in it together, and it gets them tighter. The more they go through, the tighter they get. And I told my wife, I said, you know, I can see that in our relationship. When we were losing our baby, we got tighter. It's in the moments that things were just okay, where we were just plugging along when life was comfortable, that we grew apart. And then even now, like I can tell you now, going through this right now, we are tighter, right? So as we've gone into harder stuff, we've had fewer arguments. Sure, we have little flare ups, but in that, we're also more compassionate toward each other. It's when things get like, yeah, life is fine, is when we start fracturing and starting getting weaker again. So, and it's not that we're like, if one of us or both of us were avoiding the pain of this current situation, if we quit working, if we started just watching TV, if we quit taking care of our kids, we would probably fall apart. But our response has been the opposite. We've given each other grace. We've taken more time to watch TV. We've taken more time to just nap if we need it. But at the same time, we have a sense of like we're in this together. We're united in that we're not going outside. We're united in that we need to continue working. We need to continue helping our customers. We need to continue teaching our kids. It's hard, but we are going to be stronger for it. And that's been the mentality through this whole thing. And he says, when we avoid pain, when we avoid stress and chaos and tragedy and disorder, we become fragile. So that's when I see comments about, like, why do I need to find my day? I'm just sitting on the couch not doing anything. This is what I think about. That person is avoiding pain, avoiding stress, avoiding chaos, avoiding tragedy and disorder. They are becoming fragile. And when we talk, like we talked yesterday, about how prepared are we going to come out of this situation, whether it's May 1st or May 1st, 2021, how strong are you going to come out of this situation? I'm not saying work your butt off. I'm not saying be, super fitness freak. I'm saying don't avoid the hard thoughts, the hard conversations. Don't numb yourself. Don't drink yourself, into a numb state. Don't be Netflixing yourself into a numb state. Every day, try to do just a little bit more to grow yourself. Moving on. The more anti-fragile we become, the more graceful our emotional responses are, the more control we exercise over ourselves, and the more principled our values. This sentence right here made me go, oh shit, I feel that. Because 5 years ago, I was highly reactive. I was operating in a way to get small wins immediately in my life. I was not operating based on principle. I was operating based on pleasure, whatever that might have been, right? Going out and having a good time, making more money, whatever, right? But I was fragile, right? And I'm not saying I am anti-fragile right now, but I can see the difference. I can see the difference. I can see myself getting into a yelling match with somebody that disagreed with me 5 years ago. Whether they were, liberal, right wing, if I disagreed with them, I could see a small disagreement turning into F you, right? Unfriending them, blocking them, whatever, right? But now I'm looking at these conversations as a learning experience, right? How can I, if I can't influence this person, did I say that right? If I can't influence this person, what can I at least learn from this conversation? What can I learn about their point of view? What can I learn about navigating this conversation with a sense of grace and a sense of like respect for this person, while also saying I disagree, while telling them like this is why I feel you're wrong? And, also trying to find that place, like, what conversations don't I want to engage in anymore? What conversations am I just going to let go? Like, never even say, like, just watch the person and go, go ahead, go on your day. I'm going to go on mine. And then what other ones am I going to choose to go into and try to navigate that difficult conversation? As Brene Brown says, rumble with vulnerability. Rumble, have that hard conversation, because by having that conversation, we can grow from it. So, that's, going back to that, I'm going to read this one more time. The more anti-fragile we become, the more graceful our emotional responses are. So I feel that the more graceful our emotional responses are, because, again, 5 years ago, highly defensive, angry. If somebody disagreed with me, get out of here. I don't care about you, whatever, right? Dismissive. Now, and I've swung, like, for like last year, maybe a year and a half ago, I swung completely. I felt like I had to make everybody feel like I was trying to understand them. And it was almost, I dove in too much, right? Brene Brown talks about getting into the hole with them. We don't want to do that. We can be empathetic. We don't need to climb into the hole with them, right? So understanding my boundaries there and pulling back and finding a place somewhere in the middle. So now my emotions are more graceful. I still get mad. I still get angry about things. It happens. I'm still working on it. But trying to give someone else a little bit of space in understanding where they are, and not feeling the need to respond and engage and get triggered with what somebody says or doesn't say. I can tell you, 2 years ago, somebody commenting on Define My Day, something that we worked on for a long time, and somebody saying, what, this is garbage. I can go buy a $5 notebook somewhere else. Like, that hurt, right? And it would get me angry. And I'd really try to hold off from responding to that person. But now it's different, right? Now that person, maybe they just don't have the money. Now we've actually responded to people like, look, I'll teach you how to do it at home by yourself. This started by me writing in a notebook. I'll tell you how to do it now. And if eventually, if you want to buy it from us, I would love for you to do that. But go ahead and do it at home, right? It's just a different way of looking at it. My perspective changed. The more control we exercise with ourselves, or I'm sorry, the more control we exercise over ourselves, the more principled our values. So when we talk about daily disciplines, right, we talk about the agreements we make with ourselves. So I want to be disciplined in my behavior, my health, the little things I do every day. Whether it's what discipline could be, doing the dishes every day. The discipline could be meditating, which I think is going to be so important for a lot of people. The discipline in even doing Define My Day every day. The discipline in following through on my priorities every day, right? That discipline I exercise over myself is benefiting me in the long term in so many other areas. That's the value. And when somebody says, I don't even know how to get started with this, I don't know what to write down, don't worry about it. Just do it. Make that your discipline, that you'll just follow the process and do the work. That discipline alone is exercising control over yourself. And in the end, the cost is 5 or 10 minutes a day. But the benefit lands everywhere. The benefit is the thought you put into talking to someone close to you. The thought you put into being intentional about every other action you have in a day. Being intentional in one little thing happens, like, the benefit happens everywhere else. All right, last couple of pages here. No matter how much, I'm lisping. No matter how much wealth is generated in the world, the quality of our lives is determined by the quality of our character and the quality of character is determined by our relationship to our pain. It's big, right? No matter how much wealth is generated in the world, the quality of our lives is determined by the quality of our character, and the quality of our character is determined by our relationship to our pain. Are we running from it? Or are we understanding it? Are we working through it? Are we numbing ourselves? Or are we dealing with the things we need to deal with? Last part. Pain opens up the moral gaps that eventually become our most deeply held values and beliefs. When we deny ourselves the ability to feel pain for a purpose, we deny ourselves the ability to feel any purpose in our life at all. What's the common thing that I see when people write that comment about what's the use? You know, am I going to schedule watching Netflix 8 hours a day? If I were to ask that person what their purpose is in their life, do you think they're going to be able to tell me what it is? So what's that person's life going to look like down the road? And I'm not judging, I'm challenging. If you would have asked me what my purpose was 5 years ago, I might have had a vague idea, right? If you would have asked me 15 years ago, I would have had no idea. No idea. And that was my struggle. I had no idea what I was alive to do. The first time I ever felt a sense of purpose was when my kid was born, because I felt responsible for raising him right. And it took me just about 10 years to figure out even what that looked like after he was born. He's 9. Still working on it. But I never felt that sense of like, whoa, this is bigger than me now, right? This is bigger than my small little concerns. And whether you have kids or not, and whether they're out of the house yet or not, I think that it just illustrates the importance of knowing what your purpose is. You know, whatever that might be for you, whatever that looks like, what's the reason you're on this planet? You got to clarify that. And we all have it, right? We all have it. It's just whether we're avoiding it or not. We're avoiding the pain that it might take to reach that purpose or fulfill that purpose. So the quicker we address it, the more work we put toward addressing it, the sooner we become content with our position in life, with our pain, comfortable. I shouldn't say content, but maybe comfortable with our pain, right? Oh God, I can't remember the name right now, but we talk about, when pain has purpose, you can get through anything when your pain has purpose. Viktor Frankl, right? How did I forget that name? I don't know. But that's the key, is we have to put purpose behind whatever pain we have and work through it. Commit to work through it. Good morning, Carolina. Yeah, or Carolina. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. But yeah, I hate screwing up people's names, so I apologize. I was making my face at myself, not anything else. Good morning. Yeah, what a topic for today, right? I mean, it is. Geez. It's something you struggle with, because I want to keep things positive, but I think we have to have these hard, stinking conversations to get through this stuff. So and I'm reading this book, and it's just, I'm going, whoa, this even like further clarifies my purpose, further clarifies, and it actually makes any pain that I'm going through right now, any struggles I'm going through right now, just a little bit more bearable. Understanding that, like, yeah, There's a couple thoughts. Yeah, like my pain is nowhere near what other people have gone through, but also, I need to learn from this, and that there's a purpose for this. And in the end, it really doesn't even matter, right? Like the pain I'm going through is temporary, and I can make it through. I can't avoid it, right? So even painful conversations like I might have on Facebook, I can learn from it. And if I just run from it and say, you know what, screw you, I'm not talking to you again, I don't learn anything from that. I don't benefit from that. So, Kimber says, any relationship I had that fell apart was after the mundane has allowed us to fall apart independently, nothing requiring cohesiveness. You're right. You're right. When you don't have that shared experience, you just drift. You drift. Absolutely. Tough times can bring folks closer if they take the opportunity to pull together for a common goal. Yep, absolutely. Chaos is becoming togetherness. Absolutely. Absolutely. Stacy says, good morning. Looking forward to getting into the book. Just bought it last night. Oh, cool. Really grateful for your review. Thank you. I spent most of yesterday planning for the next 2 months. Your little review yesterday really helped, and your examples of how to handle things has helped me understand DMD better. Good. You know what? That's why we're going through this. As I'm learning to explain the process better. I hope it benefits you guys better. So the more efficient I can become in discussing it, and we've talked, like, these videos aren't easy. They're getting easier, but I was scared of them, and I was scared of them for years. And I started small. I started in the user group, and now we're doing them on the public side of things. But if I would have just said, look, I can't be in front of the camera. I'm too fat. I'm too pale. My hair's a mess. Like, if I keep making all those excuses in my mind, I'm not going to grow and learn from it, right? I'm happy. I feel like I'm starting to get the hang of it. Awesome. Awesome. For the first time, I just boldly wrote in the next Monday, play and rest. I'm actually okay with that. Awesome. It's not been a family culture to allow that, I know. It's taking a while to shift away from the mentality of you can always do one more thing, or you're sitting there and you're just taking up space and you're being a lazy slob. I know. I can relate. Thank you very much. This is hugely helpful for me to feel empowered to redefine the culture I'm around and more in control of systems that drive me. Yes. I can't love that anymore. I look at that while I could do this myself. My time is incredibly valuable, and DMD saves my time. I agree. And that's the way I've looked at it too now, right? So like 2 years ago, I was like, well, wait a minute, buy my product. Now I look at it like, look, if your time is worth recreating our worksheet every day and writing it down manually, like if you can take that time to do that, fine. Hopefully your time becomes more valuable than the 75 cents per day it might cost you if you don't buy a bundle, right? If you buy a bundle, it's like literally under 50 cents a day. If your time isn't worth 50 cents, then okay, like, I get it, you want to create it on your own. That's all right. I'm okay with that. There are people who are just never going to buy it, people that are going to buy it and not like it, and then there's people that are going to buy it and love it, and that's who I'm going to continue to work with. But even the people that don't buy it, like, we're here publicly because my goal is not to sell a book. My goal, and this goes to like the purpose, right? My goal is to help people grow, right? My goal is to help people get out of like any kind of pit they feel like they're in right now. To get out, and even like, you don't have to be like, don't imagine like the person I'm speaking about is just somebody sitting at home doing nothing, right? I was a business owner who on the outside looked like I had everything going for me. But meanwhile, my marriage was not going well. My relationship with my kids was not going well. I was not happy with my business. I was not happy with a lot of things around me. I was really not even happy with personal relationships I had. But by all accounts, I was happy and successful, or I should have been, right? I had built up like a cage for myself, and I was felt forced to go down in a direction that was not going to lead me to a happy place. So if I kept going that way, maybe I would have had a midlife crisis. Maybe I would have woke up one day at 70 going, where did my life go? I can't believe I'm here. I regret this whole list of things, right? My goal is to stop anybody from getting to that point if they're open to realizing that they're heading on that path. So my goal is not to sell a book. I mean, yeah, I need to sell books to continue to do this, to give my family security. But my overall goal is to help people out of the trap that I found myself in. So that's my purpose, right? And anytime we come up with a business decision, I have to decide, does it align with this purpose or not, right? And if it doesn't, then we have to make another decision. So that's how it's affected me. Jan, hi Jan. This thought has intrigued me many times. It's not about controlling things, but bringing them under control. The first seems to come from fear, and the second from security within. Yeah, and I think part of that is the feeling that he talks about it in the book, and it was a while, like last week that I read it, so I'm gonna fumble through this, but it's just understanding that whatever is happening, right? And we can control what we can control, but also know that there's things out of our control that we will never control. And all we can do is try to navigate it in a healthy way. So, there's things right now, like we're still trying to close on a home, right? And right now, the only thing under my control is providing the increasing amount of documentation that we have to. But in the end, um, like if the IRS never gives up transcripts, that might just be a permanent roadblock for us, right? Um, I don't know. Like I just have to live with it, right? So I can do everything in my power to put myself in the best position, but sometimes life is going to hand us, like your restaurant closing down. Like you don't have a control over that. All you have control over is possibly what happened before in possibly saving money or putting yourself in a position, diversifying, things like that, right? But say that didn't happen. Say you didn't do that. Say you didn't have the opportunity to do that. Say it's too early in like that was a plan, it just didn't happen yet. Or maybe you never even thought about it, right? You just thought it was going to go on, whatever. Well, now's a learning experience, right? So you can't change whether your restaurant could be opened or not. The only thing you can do is grow in the areas where you can find growth. Maybe you're learning, right? Maybe you're applying for an SBA loan. Maybe you are trying to do whatever you can. Maybe you're adjusting to a takeout only model, right? But the bottom line is the situation is the situation. And all we can control is how we handle it. The virus dictates what we can do in a healthy way. The government is dictating what we can do legally. All we can do is work within those boundaries and do the things that we can do. So if you're stuck at home, like you can't control it, right? If you believe that the safest thing for you is to stay home, you can't control that. But what you can do is control what you do within these walls, what you feed yourself, what you feed your mind, how active you are, how you nurture the relationships around you, how you discipline yourself, how you explore your purpose, the little moments every day. And that's where you can change things right now. And then when you come out of this, if you come out in a healthy way because you've done all the work, then when things open back up, you're going to be so much more ahead of the game, so much more healthy. Debbie, as the stage, if the, I'm having a hard time reading today. As the stages of my life changed, my purpose has needed to change. Absolutely. Finding the new purpose as life evolved has been very challenging for me, and not and more. I'm sorry, Debbie. I hate to ruin something nice that you wrote. Finding the new purpose as life evolved has been very challenging for me and more than difficult, but absolutely not impossible. Absolutely, right? Difficulty causes growth. Stress causes growth. From everything from a lobster to us, right? When you feel stress, it's life telling you it's time to grow. Angel says, speaking of closing, yesterday was so stressful. I kept forgetting things at home and had to go back twice. Oh my God. We were running late, so I had to call and let them know. It all worked out in the end, though. So glad that chapter is closed. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And for us, I mean, we just keep moving forward and keep answering whatever questions we have to answer, and like things are happening, right? I mean, so we do what we can do. We learn from it, and that's it. That's it. But we keep moving forward with the best of intentions, and knowing that we did everything we could, and hope for the best. I'm still hoping to be moved within a week, and until I'm told no, then that's my intention, and that's the way we're acting, right? And I still have faith that it's going to happen. But you get stressed out and you get scared and you get things can go the opposite way. And until it happens, you have to allow for the fact that it might not. So uh, we do what we can do. We do what we can do. So I appreciate you guys all joining me today. Stay healthy. Certainly don't avoid pain. And I would say after reading this book, the importance of meditation it just grows with everything I read. It just grows every time, every time. But if you missed it, this is the book we were talking about today. Everything is effed. I picked this one up at Target. You can buy it on Amazon also. I can maybe drop a link in the comments here for you. Um, but take care of yourself. Keep moving forward. Don't run away from the pain. And I'll talk to you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.